meeting here. Move that off to the side. And start this slideshow. Oops, wrong screen. Of course, it's going to open my second monitor here. Let's change that to primary. There we go. All right, so everybody should be able to see my slideshow now. Melissa, can you see the first slide there? Says the Pragmatic Works Advanced DAX.
Yes, I do.
Okay, awesome. I'll make sure it's showing the right screen. All right, well, welcome everyone. My name is Mike Davis, and we're going to be talking about advanced DAX expressions today. So I'm going to show you some complex situations that you'll get into when you're building a Power Pivot workbook that you don't typically have a solution for unless you can write some DAX expressions. So I'm going to show you some examples of that, and got a special surprise for you at the end, a little takeaway that you can you'll have too. So stick around for that. So first, we're going to talk about me. So the boring part here. So my name is Mike Davis. I'm a managing project lead here at Pragmatic Works. I was a BI architect for years with them, and now I manage the BI architect team. I'm an author on several books on SQL Server, specifically BI, and I'm certified in business intelligence. And so there's a few books I've written here. There's a 24-hour trainer for BI. If you're trying to learn BI from the ground up, it's a great one. The new Pro SSIS book is out now, and then the 24-hour trainer for SSIS 2012 is coming out, and it's on pre-order right now on Amazon. So, as you can tell, SSIS is my bread and butter. It's someone I like to work with the most, but also enjoy working with Power Pivot. So, with that, let's talk about our agenda. So we're going to cover how to do many-to-many inside of Power Pivot, how to use inactive relationships, and we're going to talk about hierarchy paths and how to traverse those, and we're going to go through some time intelligence, and then again, there's a little freebie at the end I'm going to give you. All right, so let's talk about many-to-many. When you're creating a cube, a traditional cube in a multi-dimensional database, many-to-many is very easy to do. You just create a bridge table and you connect it up, and it sees those relationships and it works great. Drag and drop and slice and dice and works perfectly. In Power Pivot, it doesn't quite do that. You've got to write your own DAX expressions to make that happen. So before I show you the example, let's talk about what many-to-many is and when you would use that. So I work with lots of different types of data, being a consultant at different companies. And one of the common scenarios I've seen is with healthcare companies or medical data with diagnosis. So you may have a fact table that has information about visits. So you go to the doctor and you get seen, that's one visit. But during that visit, the doctor gives you multiple diagnoses. So you may he says, all right, you come in, all right, you've got the gout, and you've got rabies, and you've got chicken pox too. All right, so you get 3 different diagnoses while you're there at the doctor, and but that's for one visit. And of course, then also that diagnosis reaches out to multiple visits for multiple people. So any point in time, any of those diagnoses could be given to any person at any visit. So that's a good example of a many-to-many situation there. And so you need a bridge table for that. So you'll have your fact, and my example there, your fact would be the visit, and then your dimension table, which would be your dim diagnosis table. And then the bridge table, joining the two of those, basically contains all the keys from the fact table and all the keys from the dimension table, joining up whenever there's a fact that needs to join to that dimension. A lot of times you can confuse your users with this, and I'll show you why when we actually start slicing and dicing here. They may confuse them because it doesn't look like the numbers add up right in the summations. But I'll show you that in a second here. So by the way, also, I don't know if you guys have heard, Windows 8 is coming out here soon, and it's Bill Gates has been working real hard to try to get kids to adopt it. So somebody snapped a picture of him trying to get a kid to adopt Windows 8. Isn't that cute? All right. So you're going to learn about DAX today, and you're getting a lot of bad jokes. All right, that's my shtick. All right, so let's go open up my Power Pivot workbook, and I've got an example here of many-to-many. So what I've done is I've created a sales rep table, and I've got 4 sales reps on it, and they got IDs. So Mike, Dustin, Adam, Brian, and then their IDs here. And we go to our sales table, and we have some sales. So we have some sales IDs here, and then their amounts. So this sale had a $100 sale, this one's a $200 sale, and so on and so forth here. But you notice that my salesperson or my sales rep ID is not on this table. And that's because these sales here are attributed to more than one salesperson. So maybe it's selling large computer systems or things like that where more than one sales rep is going to work on that job. So this $100 right here is actually attributed to 2 different people. So 2 sales reps work on that. So we can't just map this sales ID over to a salesperson because we would need more than one row here for that salesperson. So to make that connection, we use a bridge table. And here is my bridge table. So here you can see that we've got salesperson number 1 here. He actually worked on those 2 right there. Salesperson number 2 worked on those 2 sales. Salesperson number 3 worked on these, and salesperson number 4 worked on those. And you can see there's some sort of overlap here. So salesperson 1 and salesperson 4 worked on that same sale right there. And salesperson number 4 and salesperson number 2 worked on that same sale. So they both worked on the sales together, so they're going to share the, that information inside of our database. So if I say, show me all the sales that salesperson 1 worked on, it'll show the proper sales. And same thing if I should say, show me everything for number 4, even though they share that sale. All right, so these are called linked tables here. So what I did basically is that you can come into Power Pivot and you can create a table. I'll show you how to do that real easy. Let me create a new sheet here. And if you wanted to create a table like this, you just say you have an ID column and maybe a name column, and then you put an ID and you put in a name, and then you highlight this, go to Power Pivot, and we click on Create Linked Table. Say my table has headers, click OK, and that's it. It would create a table inside of my Power Pivot workbook. I'm going to hit cancel. I don't want to add that to it, but that's how easy it is to add tables to your Power Pivot. So if you've got a Power Pivot workbook that you're working on and you'd like to add a new table to it, but that table just doesn't exist in your database, it's something really manually needs to be entered, it's really easy to enter those manually by that process I just showed. All right, let's get rid of that extra sheet there. I don't need that. All right, so we have our data here. We have our bridge table, sales rep. I've already pulled those in using the link table here. So let's go to our Power Pivot window now and let's see what that looks like. Go to the diagram view here. And there it is right there. So here's our bridge table, and you can see the relationship is coming out of our bridge table, going to our sales rep table and to our sales table. So this sale ID here ties to the sale ID on our bridge table, and then the sales rep ID ties to the rep ID on our bridge table. And this works great. Normally if you see this inside of, say, a multi-dimensional cube, this works great, and you can slice and dice, and it's easy. But with Power Pivot actually sees the relationship over here. It sees this relationship here, and it sees this relationship over here, but it doesn't actually cross over. So it doesn't see the relationship between the 2 tables. So you can't just drag and drop and slice with slice rep name by sales amount, or slice for sales amount by rep name. You can't do that, unfortunately. It gives you a Cartesian product of that, and I'll show you what that looks like. So let's go back to my sheet here. I'm going to create a new sheet, and let's create a new window off that. So I'm going to hit Pivot Table window here, and if I drag over, say, my sales rep name, and then from there I grab the sale amount just off of that table and drop it in here, you'll see what I get here. So if I try to drag my sale amount over, I get this Cartesian product. Basically, it takes all the sales amounts and kind of sums them up together. Total there is 2,900, and it just adds it to everybody. Because it can't see the relationship, you get this kind of cross join that occurs. So obviously that information is incorrect. So I need to get rid of that. If we go to the bridge table though, and I pull over, say, a sale ID, and let me drop that in my columns here, and sales rep ID here, you can see that it is joined to the bridge table correctly. So I can see that Mike here worked on sale 457 and 456 there, and you can see that Dustin worked on 458 and 459, et cetera, and you can see that Brian and Mike worked on those 2 sales together, and Brian and Dustin worked on those 2 together, and you can see Adam has these 3 over here that he did by himself. He didn't share anything. So that's how the relationship's built. So it is working as long as I pull it from the bridge table. So I pulled those 2 fields, the top column and the ID in there, from the bridge table, and that works great. But as soon as I try to go over and grab something from the sales table, that's when we get the Cartesian product there. I just can't see that relationship. So how do we make that work? Let's go back to Power Pivot, and I'll show you how we make that work. Let's go to Data View here. First of all, if you just do a regular old sum of sales amount, which is what I've got here, and this is on the sales table, this is my sale table here, so I do sum of sales amount, that's not going to work. That's just a regular old DAX expression there, and if we go back and I grab that sum of sales amount, which I have already there, you'll see that, again, we get the Cartesian product. So doing just a normal expression there is not going to work for us. If we go back to the window though, I've created another one down below here, and I called it many-to-many amount, just so you could tell that it's a little different. And let's drop this down. I'm going to hit enter a couple times here so that you guys can see this a little easier. You have to hit shift enter here to make that happen. There we go. And zoom in, and let's talk about how this function works. So the first thing you see here is calculate. The nice thing about DAX is when you're typing this in, it has IntelliSense built in. So if you type in the word calculate and put that parentheses in there, it automatically tells you what you need to put in next. It gives you little tool tips there. So DAX is much, much easier to use than MDX. If you haven't started writing any DAX functions, give it a try. Just start typing in letters there, and it actually fills in and gives you suggestions. It's actually really easy to get started with DAX. There are a lot of complex things you can do with DAX. I'm going to try to show you those today, but it's really easy to get started. So if you're afraid to write DAX calculations, go ahead and start playing with it. They're not hard to learn from the basic standpoint. Okay, so calculate is the first one here. When I type in calculate, it tells me, okay, I need a expression, basically something I want to do. In this case, I want to sum up the sales amount, and then I need a filter. So I have calculate here, and then my sum, and then my comma right here separates out my filter. So the first part there, calculate sum, says calculate my sum, and then the rest of it is just a filter, telling me I want to filter out these values. So what am I going to filter out? I'm going to filter out the sale ID here, where I count on the related table, that sales bridge, and I have rows that are greater than 0. So I only want to see it where I have a sale ID that I can count on my bridge table, and there's at least one on there. So that's where it's going to sum up. So it'll sum up my sales amount now, but only where I have this relationship. This is basically that relationship that we're missing. So it's getting our sales ID from the related table on the bridge. So now if I have a sale ID on it, then I know that that actually is a proper sale from my bridge table, and that's when I'll count this, this value. So if I go back to my Power Pivot workbook again, back to Excel, let me get out of the expression here. And I get rid of that sum of sales amount, which doesn't work. If I drag down the many-to-many sales amount that I have over here that I've created, drop that in, now you can see I'm getting numbers for their sales. So this looks great. That's the correct number for each person there. But what is the problem here? What are your end users going to say when they bring up this workbook and see this? They're going to see 2,000. That's just about 2,500. That's 3,000. 3,000. If you add these up, they don't add up to 2,900. And this is actually the correct amount, though. This amount here is the right amount, believe it or not. But you know what's going to happen? Your end user is going to open this up. They're going to highlight these columns right here. They're going to look down to the bottom. They're going to see the summation is $3,350. There's something wrong with your workbook there, Mr. IT guy or Mr. BI guy. You need to go in and fix your workbook. When actually, no, this is actually the correct number right here. And if I drag over the sales ID here and drop it into columns, you can kind of tell that here. So if we look at this divided up by sales ID, you can see that Mike worked on this sale for $100 and $200, and so it is a correct number. You get $300 worth of work that he did, sales that he's attributed to. And Brian worked on $200 and $250, so his sale is $450. But Mike and Brian share that $200 right here. They share the $200, so we don't want to count the $200 twice as a total, because we didn't have $400 in sales, we had $200 in sales. It's just that Mike and Brian happen to work on the same sale. Across the bottom here, these are the correct numbers here. You'll see that the 200 is only counted one time for this ID, so we don't see 400 at the bottom there. So these numbers here would actually add up to the 2,900 like they're supposed to. But when we sum it up by sales rep, you're going to get numbers that are correct, and these numbers are all right, including the calculation at the bottom here is all right, but your end users may be confused by that. So that's a little bit of a training issue there you may have to go through to teach your end users that many minis do work. It's just you have to trust these numbers here and Maybe you have to put some good naming conventions on this, letting them know that this is many-to-many or something, so that they know that the numbers aren't going to sum up correctly on the screen, but they are the right numbers in the back. All right, so that is many-to-many. Let's go back to my slideshow here. All right, next thing we're going to talk about is inactive relationships. So when you're building a Power Pivot model, you may use, say, a date table, and you may have a fact table that has more than one date on it. For example, in InventureWorks, you'll see there's an order date, a due date, and a ship date on in InventureWorks. And if I bring over my date dimension, I'm just going to show those three relationships in the date diagram view, which I'll show you in just a moment here. But only one of the relationships can be active at a time. And so how to use that relationship? And oh yeah, I don't know if you guys saw Bill Gates was getting a new haircut, and the guy cutting his hair was a big Apple fan, and it was a big debacle. I don't think he's keep that around very long. All right, so let's move on. Let's talk about active relationships. So speaking of relationships, you're not going to get a relationship with that haircut. Oh, all right, let's go back to our model here, and let's talk about inactive relationships and active relationships. I'm going to close this one up here, and I have another workbook here called DAX Demos. Let me open that one up, and let's go to Power Pivot. By the way, Power Pivot is a free install. You can download it. Just do a search for Power Pivot. There's a 2012 version out now. It works great with Office 2010, and it's free. That's what I'm using here today. All right. So here we go. Here's a great example here. So I have my date here. I have my date key, my full date, calendar month, calendar year. I have my my date information here on my date table, which I'll show you how to create a date table too in a minute here. It's real easy to do. But you'll see I have these multiple relationships here between my date and my reseller. If I double-click on one of these, you'll see that one is by ship date here. So my ship date is related to my reseller table by ship date and date key. And the next one here, if I double-click on that, you'll see this one's related by due date to the date key. So on and so forth. So there's multiple relationships here. But the only active relationship I have here is this one here, the one that's actually darkened in, and that's the ship date one. That's my active relationship here. You can always tell your active relationships by the dark line here, and you can double-click on them to see which one's active. The dotted line ones are inactive. So when I start slicing and dicing this by date, it's only going to use that active relationship. It's not going to use any of the other ones there. But we can cheat, and we can actually use other relationships if we want by using some DAX expressions. So if we go back here and go to our sales table here, you see I've got lots of calculations that I've created. I've even got some KPIs over here I've created. If we have time, I might mention those. But I do have a calculation here that I've created. So here's my year-to-date. Zoom in here. So doing year-to-date is really easy inside of DAX. So there's my total YTD function. I put in what I want year-to-date on. I want the year-to-date of my sum of sales amount. Sum of sales amount is another calculation I've created already. And then you basically have to put in the date here. And that's it. So I put in my date, and that's it. It'll sum up year-to-date for me. So this is all built in. That's why DAX is so easy to use. I got functions like this total YTD. It'll work for you. There's also a QTD and MTD for month-to-date and year and quarter-to-date. So a lot of good stuff there. All right, but right now, if I do this though, I'm not telling it what date to use. All I did was just say use full date alternate key. I'm not telling it which relationship to use. So it's going to use the ship date. That's the one it's going to use. I can't change it with this one here. But if I go to my second calculation I've created here, I'm doing the same thing here. Total YTD here. But I'm throwing, instead of just throwing the sum in there, I'm using the calculate function again. Remember, calculate says do this, but use this filter. So after my comma here, the rest of this is just a filter. And you can see my filter is quite easy. It's just a use relationship here. So use relationship, what relationship do I want you to use? I want you to use the relationship between the date alternate key, the reseller sales date, and I want you to use that due date is what I want you to use. Due date, I don't want you to use that, the ship date. So I can change this to whatever date I want here. So I'm using the due date from the reseller sales table. And then the last thing here is the date again, and that goes back to the total YTD back there at the beginning. So you just throw that in. That's part of the total YTD function. So the use relationship part is just this one right here. We're just using that relationship, full day alternate key, where it relates to the due date. All right. And if I go over here to Power Pivot now, and I slice this up, actually I think I already have it over here on one of my other sheets. I should name these sheets, make it a little easier, huh? Let's go back and I'll just create a new one here. All right, new sheet here. And I'm going to grab my calendar, and I'm going to go to my sales, and I'm going to grab my sum of sales amount first, and I'm going to grab the sum of sales amount year to date by due date. So there's year to date and there's year to date by due date. So I've got two of them here. And let's expand out, say 2006, and maybe a couple of months here. Let's just do quarters since make it easier. All right, so here's my year to date sales. Here's my year to date sales by due date. And you can see these numbers are different. So it is pulling in different numbers here for those year to date. And you can tell the year to date's working here. So if you look at, so there's $4 million there for that quarter, $4 million for this one, that adds up to about $8 million, $8.2 million there. So it is summing up as the year goes on here. And the summation for the entire year should match, and they do. And January should match also, or first quarter should match, because it's the very first quarter, nothing summed up yet. So real easy to do there. It's just a use relationship filter, basically. That's all you're doing. You do have to throw the calculate function there for that filter to work, but then you're just going to use the use relationship function to filter it out. All right, so that is the year-to-date one. A couple more that's in here that are very common requests are prior period, which I'm going to get to next here. So let's get out of active and inactive relationships. Oh, so one other item before I go to that, let me go back to the workbook here. So one of the option that you have, and some people have done this, and it works fine as long as you're able to fit the data in there, is instead of trying to use those inactive relationships and create calculations, you can just drag the date table in here multiple times and give it different names. So we can have maybe a due date table, a ship date table, and a reseller table, a reseller date table, or something like that. And now your end users will have 3 different dates that they can drag in and slice by. There's a give and take here. So the pro of this is now it's easier to slice and dice by whatever date you want. The con is now you're going to have the date inside here 3 times, and your end users are going to see 3 different date dimensions, and they're going to have to know which one they want to grab, which one they want to slice by. And if you have a lot of things in your side of your date dimension besides just a plain hierarchy there, if you didn't hide everything, you're leaving in like say month number, quarter number, and things like that, then your end users are going to have to scroll through all those items 3 times now instead of just 1. All right. What relationship was needed to be created? There's a question in the question room here. It says, what relationship was needed to be created in the last example? So the relationship was automatically created when I dragged in the date table here and my reseller table. These relationships right here were already created. So there's there's 3 inactive relationships here for due date, ship date, and order date. And there's 1 active one here for ship date. I'm sorry, there's actually 4 relationships here because I had to create a date to change it. All right, so I had to cheat a little bit. I wasn't going to show you guys this, but I had to cheat just a little bit. Go to their research sales here. If I scroll to the left, I created this one called new due date, and all I did is basically just take the date and bump it up by 1 month. The reason I did that is because the due date and the ship date and the order date were all the exact same date, like everywhere, all throughout the whole thing, or at least all in the same month anyway. So the year-to-date numbers were identical. So I just made a new due date and bumped it up by a month so the numbers would not match. So I cheated a little bit. But anyway, you should have 3 relationships here normally, due date, ship date, and order date, and one of those would be active. Okay. No, in the Excel workbook there was a create warning in the pivot field. Oh, okay. So if we go back to the pivot field list here, so not sure you saw it over here. Maybe back in the many-to-many example. Oh, on the many. Oh, yes. Okay, on the many. Yes. So in the many-to-many example, you're going to have that error message or that warning over there that pops up. Let me go back and show that real quick. Don't save that. I didn't make any changes. So it's a good question, Bob. So let me go back and show that real quick. So if you look at these many-to-manys here, you'll see this relationships may be needed here. It says create here. Relationships are not needed. There's actually no relationship directly between the sales and sales rep because it goes through that bridge table. So we don't want to create a relationship there. It's going to give you a suggestion. It's going to say, hey, please create one. And we go to details here, and it'll say no relationship was detected here. So it won't create one. But that's what it's telling you to do. It wants to create a relationship there. We really don't need to. Good question. All right, let's move on back to my demo here. Okay, any questions on the inactive relationships before I go on to the next section here? Come on, stay up, slideshow. Are there any limitations on what DAX can do? Yes, I'm sure there are. I can't think of any right off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's a lot of limitations on what DAX can do. That's a big question, Jeff. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for you. There's a ton of functions in there. You can do just about anything in Power Pivot. You can do multidimensional. The big difference is in Power Pivot, you're limited to what you can fit in memory. Because in Power Pivot, everything's in memory. You're slicing and dicing here in memory. That's why it's so fast. You get a hyper compression when you create a Power Pivot workbook. So if you've got, say, a 600 meg, database you're pulling in, usually you get like maybe a 60 or even a 50 meg file coming out of that. So you get a really big compression there, but you're not going to pull a terabyte of memory. You're not going to pull a terabyte size database into this and slice and dice it. If you're going to do that, you're going to need to go with a traditional multidimensional cube for large ones like that. So that's the big limitation in terms of Power Pivot. Okay, so hierarchy. So we're going to create a hierarchy here. We have a table that actually has a hierarchy already built into it, and I want to use that hierarchy. So back in the multidimensional world, if you had say a table that is self-joining, and the example I'm going to show is one where you've got an employee that answers to a manager. So you have an employee key, and then you have their manager key, and then so on and so forth. So you can see who answers to who, and you kind of get an org chart for your company using this. And but in the multidimensional world, it works great. You drag and drop into your cube, boom, you're good to go. Everything's great. But in DAX, it doesn't quite work like that. You have to actually manually tell it to use that hierarchy. And there's a path function and a lookup function that you can use to make that happen. It's not terribly difficult to make that happen. So, so you guys want to know what the definition of workaholic is? You might know what the definition of workaholic. That's the definition of workaholic right there. All right. Again, nothing but bad jokes. All right. We have another question. If we have to build row-level security, do we need to add user table for security model? Yes. So HG, yes. If you want to build a row-level security, you will need a user table in there for that. There are security options. You'll need to have, instead of using just Power Pivot here in the workbook, there is security options built into the BISM tabular model in 2012. And there's partitioning in there also. So in 2012, there's a bunch of new features in SQL 2012 for that. Okay, so let's go take a look at our hierarchy here. And let's go to my employee dimension. All right, so here's my kind of self-built hierarchy right here. I have an employee key and I have a parent employee key. So you can see this employee here answers to this employee, and that employee also answers to the same guy. And then he answers to this guy, and so on and so forth. So it kind of goes up the chain there. To use that in Power Pivot, we've got to do a few things. So I created this little path function next to it here, and it's using the path function from DAX, and it says basically give me the path from this key to this key in my table. So we'll actually traverse throughout the whole table there and try to find the relationships and just go all the way up to the top of the relationship here. So you can see that this guy here, number 2, answers to number 7, and the number 7, we know right here now that he answers to number 112. That's the employee key there. So this employee key 112, obviously that must be our CEO, because you can see he's at the top of everybody's list here. So he must be the CEO of the whole company there. And you can see how many levels we go down here. Multiple levels going down to regular employees, maybe managers, executives, and the CIO, and maybe CEO, or something like that. So kind of goes up and down the chain there. It does a delimited one here, a delimited list here with a pipe delimiter. You can't change that, it's kind of built in there. But we can use this path now, and we can go right over here to the next one, and I'm using two functions now. I'm using lookup value, and I'm using path item. So let's talk about path item first. Path item says, I'm going to give you a path, and so we need that path function already done, which I have over here. So I've done my path, and I'm going to say, in that path, I want you to give me number, and then I tell it what item I want. In this case, I want number 1. So I want path item 1 from the employee path that I just created here. Pretty easy. That's exactly what I'm getting. So I get back to 112 there, so I know what my key is that I want now. And then I do a lookup value, and I say, I want you to look up. What do I want you to look up? I want you to look up the full name. How do I want you to look it up? I want you to look it up using the employee key. And now what key is it that you want to use? And that's the 112 that I just got from my path item here. So that's how the lookup value function works. What do I want? What am I going to use to look it up? And what's the actual value that I need to pass into that? So I get back a full name. So there's, you see Ken Sanchez, he's obviously our CEO, and I even titled this row here, this column CEO. Next one over, Peter Krebs here, he's an executive. Identical here, except all I did was change it to a 2 here on the next one. So I can basically copy and paste this over as many times as I need to and change that number there for each level in the hierarchy. So one gotcha here, this is a manual process, so I am actually having to manually create each one of these columns. So I would have to know how many columns I have in here. You can do a kind of a count or order this by length here and see which one's your longest, so you know how many you have in your database. So you know how many levels you need to go down. But the advantage now, because you're manually doing it, you can name each one of these columns whatever you want, and now I can create a hierarchy with that, which I did. So if we go back to diagram view, and we go to my employee table here, you can see I created a hierarchy right over here with CEO, executive, and manager. And I did that by just right-clicking inside of here and selecting create hierarchy, and then you drag and drop the items into the hierarchy, which I did already. And I have my org chart right here. And if I go back to Excel, you can see that org chart right over here. And there it is. Now you expand that out, we can see those items. You can see I have some blanks coming inside of here. Actually, I'm missing data from there. I don't have anything in there, which is fine. I can clean that up by using isBlank and clean that up later on, but I didn't do that in this example. All right, so let's go back to any questions on using the hierarchy paths there. So, you know, back in MDX or analysis services, traditional cubes, they tell you not to use those self-joining hierarchies like that because they're really, really bad for performance. So bad that if you got more than, say, 50,000 rows on a table, your end users are going to get an hourglass every time they try to slice and dice by those hierarchy. It's better to do it manually back inside of a regular cube, unless you have a very small cube. Here inside of DAX, these work great because it's not actually traversing that hierarchy anymore. Now it's all in memory. I'm creating my own using a path function, so this is a great way. No need to kind of naturalize the table. Okay, time intelligence is our last section here, and then I'll give you guys your free takeaway, your free gift for the day. So time intelligence. So it's really easy to create a date table. UDate function is a very common one. Prior period is a very common one also, and then semi-additive, a very common request here. So I'm going to show you some examples of those. So let's go back. And so first of all, creating a date table, real easy to do. If you want to create a date table, I'm going to say this is going to be my date here, and maybe my month over here, and my quarter, and my year, and then whatever the items that you want to pull out of your date are fine. And then I'll start with, say, 1/1/2000, something like that. And then all I need to do is drag my little icon down like that, and it fills in my dates for me going down. And now for the month, I just do month. And what do I want the month of? I want the month of this item right here. So, oops, and then put an equal symbol in there first. Make it actually a function. Oops. So equals month. And I want this column right here to make it a month. There we go. I get my month. Drag that down. The month gets repeating there. Generally, you can't tell which month it is though because I didn't go down far enough. So let's go down a little further. There we go. You see February starts there. And I can do the same thing for quarter. So equal to QAT quarter. I think it's a quarter function. Actually, there is no quarter function. So that's something I have to manually do. I have to create a formula for that. But I can't get the year out of that really easily. One of these days I'll learn how to type. So I can't get the year out of that. Like so. Grab this item here. There we go. And drag that down also. For quarter, I'll have to do something like if January or if month is 1 through 3, then 1, if and something like that. I have to do a little more complex when I get quarter because there is no quarter function there. A quartile and a quotient, but nothing for quarter itself there, unfortunately. Okay, and then once you have that done, simply highlight the table here, hit Create Linked Table until it has headers, and then it'll add it to your Power Pivot model. I'm not going to add it in there because I've already got one added, but that's how easy it is to create a date table. Just drag and drop basically from the top there. Once you get your first row created, just drag all the rows down and it creates them for you. All right, let's go back to Power Pivot now. And I'll show you a couple of formulas that I created here. So real easy formulas here. Year to date, I've already went through that one there. So it's just total YTD for that one. And we did the use relationship already. And I want to do year to date, but I want to do year to date for last year. And so total YTD again, sum of sales amount. And remember this section right here, this is a filter. That's what you're looking for, a filter for your YTD here. And what, or actually a set, I'm sorry, you're looking for a set here. So what set do I want? I want the same period last year. And you just basically pass in your date there. And that's it. So same period last year is a way to get prior period. So same period last year will work for any level inside the hierarchy. So if I go back to my Excel workbook here, and go back to my sheet where I was showing year to date there, which I think is right here. I'm going to name these sheets later on so I can stop doing this part. All right, we'll create a new sheet. What it says it's doing some other function right now. All right, whatever. Let's go back and I'll show you that again. Why is my field list missing now? All right, something's going on. It's kind of gotten in the middle of something. It won't get out of it. Let me try closing it, reopen it. It won't let me do anything to the sheet here. I can't even close the sheet. Wonderful. All right, so this is a new feature Microsoft built in. It's called the coffee break. And all right, so let's take some questions while we're waiting for this to close. All right, is it possible to say take one higher than the base versus saying position 1, 2, etc.? Ooh, that's a good question. So you can do that. What you'd have to do is you have to do some sort of count on the field to get to how many items you have. You have to use a function for that to kind of count maybe the length there or count the number of pipes that you have, and then do so you count the number of pipes. You got 3 pipes, and if 3, then make it 4, or minus 1 from the count of pipes, something like that. So that's a good question. I think you could make that happen, Brett. I haven't done it before though. Let's see, not related to, but how are you drawing those areas? Oh, okay, Zoom It tool. It's Control Z, Control S with Zoom It there. You use Tab to draw circles, etc., etc. Lots of ways to do stuff with Zoom It there. Is there performance impact when chaining formulas, or the result resolved and stored in memory? Therefore instant. Okay, they are instant. Yeah. So chaining formulas, you shouldn't see any degradation in performance at all there. Any reasons why you didn't use parallel period? Just to show other items, just to show different functions here, Mike, that's all. Which version of Excel and Power Pivot add-in are you using? I'm using 2012, and account would work well. Thanks. Okay. All right. So let's go back to Power Pivot again here. And so I wanted to slice something up here. Here we go. I wanted to do calendar. And I wanted to do reseller sales amount. And year to date prior period. There we go. All right, there we go. So this should work for us now. All right, so there's my year-to-date prior period. So here's my year-to-date so far for this year. And you see last year I wasn't doing so hot. And you can see it matches there as my year-to-date from last year right there. So we can compare period over period. I could also now make a formula where I take these two right here and subtract them from each other and show the difference, maybe show a percentage increase or decrease. Those are all simple formulas to do. So I'll skip over those. And then the last one I wanted to show was, semi-additive. Okay, so let's talk about semi-additive. Inventory is a big gotcha in terms of aggregations. So here's I have an inventory table. This is, again, just a linked table I created here. So I've got an inventory date, I got a product name, and then I got the number of units in stock. So you see on January 1st, product A there, I had 50 units in stock. On February 1st, I had 75 products in stock. And on March 1st, I had 25 products in stock. So if I ask you, how many products did we have in stock in quarter one? What's the answer? So that's a trick question. It's actually, that's a business question. So some businesses say it's the last month. Some say it's an average of that time period. Some say it's the first month. Some say it's the max of that time period. It depends on what your business is and what your business needs are. So that's a business question that you're going to have to answer when you have this type of inventory. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to sum these up. You wouldn't sum these up because I had 50 units in stock during that time. I have 75 now. Adding those two together give me 125. That 125 doesn't make any sense. Adding the 25 there, make it 150. It doesn't make any sense to have that number summed up because at no point in time did I have 150 items in stock. So to give it the proper calculations down here below, there's a few things you can do here. So we can do total units, last date. And we can get the last date. So again, using the calculate function here, I'm getting the sum of the units in stock, but I just want the last inventory date here. So I just want that last date. So that's going to give me whatever the last date is in the quarter. Next one here is, you guessed it, first date. Same thing, using calculate there, just putting in first date. Now it's going to give me the first date of the quarter. And my last one here, there's one other way you can do this besides using the last date, and that's using closing balance for the month. And this will give you your closing balance. This basically does the same thing as last date. There's also opening balance, which gives you the first date. And if I slice and dice this now back in Excel, right, inventory, I did label that one, believe it or not. There's my inventory in stock, and here's my sheet for my inventory here. So you can see I had 195, 230, and 75. If I do summations here, that is not right. That does not give me what I want here. But I want all my units for the first date. There it is right there. For that, I get 195 there. For this one, I get 75 for my closing. And, oh, I'm sorry, this was last date. I'm sorry. Last date there. There's my 75 there. So this is a summation of all my products is what that is. I'm sorry, that is actually correct. It's my summation for all my products. But there's the number I'm looking for right there. So which one do you want? Do you want the last month, first month? And of course I can create an average function too if I wanted to do that, if that's what your business needs are. All right, so that's the semi-additive there. And then my gift to you guys today is this monitoring reporting services with Power Pivot. So I've created a Codeplex site. It's Power Pivot, ssrslog.codeplex.com. You can go there and download it. It is free. It is a Power Pivot workbook that you can simply point to your reporting services log, and it will pull in all the data, and you can actually slice and dice and see who's running what reports and get trending on your reports are actually increasing or decreasing in time. It's a free workbook that you can download from the Codeplex site, and it gives you the ability to kind of monitor that. If you open it up here, open up let me close all this up here first. Let's go to, I have an example of the workbook here. And here's the reports on it. Let's go to Power Pivot. And give me a minute now. And you'll see that it's just pulling in. Give me a second now. There we go. It's just pulling in two things. It's got an execution log. This is basically just the execution log from reporting services here. I've hidden a bunch of fields that I've put in to do some work here. I've done a lot of work to make this usable because it's got a lot of things that were just it wasn't really made for human consumption, but I've kind of cleaned it up so it is, and I added a date table to it also. So if you go back to data view here, you'll see it's got things like, it's got the instance name in here, and so I found where the slash is at, and I got the server name and the instance name separated, so you can kind of build a hierarchy there. It shows you where the report is at, but it's a whole path, so I cleaned that up also. I broke it up so now you can actually see the folder it's in and the name of where the folder's at or where the report's at. It's got the username. I broke that up also, so you get the actual the domain and the username separate there, and so on and so forth. So I did a lot of work to actually clean this sheet up here, and then I put in a bunch of formulas. Oops, back here. I put a bunch of formulas in here now to give you things like averages and mins and max and things like that you'd want to see. And if we go back into Excel, I've actually created a bunch of different reports here already built in, showing you those metrics and kind of getting you started here. So you can use these for whatever you'd like. And if we go back to instructions, there's actually instructions. I wanted to make this as easy as possible, so I went ahead and put instructions on here on how to change your data source over to your to your reporting services log. So if you point that to where your log's at, make these changes, it should be fine. There's the query that actually I run there, built into the sheet that queries the log. I'm getting just the actual rendered reports, so if you want to change that, you can. And if you have questions about this, you feel free to email me. That's me right there. All right, so we got quite a few questions here, so let's go back to my question sheet. Question list here, let's see what's going on. All right, what are the differences between Power Pivot 1 and Power Pivot 2? So Power Pivot version 2, I guess you're talking about the 2012 version, they've added in the diagram view now, and it makes it much easier to use. So you can actually use this, right-click and create hierarchies now over here. Really easy to do. So lots of great features built into that now. Those are the two main ones. So I would definitely upgrade. It's free, so why not upgrade to 2012? I'd like to know how to deploy this example in SharePoint 2010. So to deploy it, to go to SharePoint, it's a little beyond the scope, but I'll mention it real quick here. Go up to File, Save As, and you pick your SharePoint site right here, and it should bring up your SharePoint site. You should be able to put it into your Power Pivot gallery out there on your SharePoint site. So SharePoint sites, you should have your SharePoint site there. If not, then you can actually type in up top here, HTTP, yada, 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 and then whatever your SharePoint location is. And it should bring up your SharePoint site, and you should see Power Pivot Gallery there. You select that and put it right in your SharePoint site. All right, how does it know the relationship to quarter? I'm not sure what you're referring to there. Maybe I have to clarify that one, actually. Is there anywhere I can deploy models without processing? So when you create a model like this, it brings the data in. It actually queries the data, brings it, it saves it in memory here. It doesn't. I think when you're talking about process, you're talking about going and getting the new data. That is up here. If you go to Data and hit Refresh, you can refresh your data. There's also under the Connections tab here. And if you go to Properties, there's actually you can set up when your data is refreshed. So you can set it to refresh every 60 minutes or when opening the file. And these are settings that if you're using SharePoint, you can set these up and actually have these automatically go out and refresh your Power Pivot workbooks in your gallery out there also. Sort by column, yes. Yes, very good. Yes, sort by column is a new one. That's an awesome one in 2012. So we go over here and say my month name is a good example of that. I don't want to sort the month name. Let's say I have month name over here. I want to sort it by a different item. There's a sort by column option now, sort by column, and I can say sort month by, and maybe it has month number over here instead. Great feature. Is a closing periods function that is? In the closing periods function. I see what you're saying. The closing periods function just says, for whatever level in the hierarchy you're in, do this. So the year would get the last day of the year. The quarter would get the last day of that quarter. The month would get the last day of that month. So. What Office, what SQL required? Okay, so you only need Office 2010, and you need Power Pivot add-in. This is a 2012 one. It's free, so that's what you're required. You actually don't need SQL at all to run this. You could actually pull in, an Access database. Every time I hear somebody say the word Access and put the word database right behind it, I kind of giggle a little bit. Anyway, you can pull in flat files. You can pull in whatever you want here. All right. You can create a year-to-date comparison of sales for the current and prior year, taking into consideration that you may be part way through the second year, i.e. show year-to-date comparisons every night for each year. Can you somehow use last invoice date? I'm sure you could, Mike. I'd have to I'd have to work on that. I have to figure out how to write that one, but I'm sure you could. There are items like has data, has value, things like that you can use to check. Also, if you're pulling back a null and it's going to error out, you can do is error or if error, and if it's an error, then do something else. A lot of functions for that. So check out the has value function for that. But you had only month in the pivot. I had month and quarter in the pivot. So when I pivoted, I did month and quarter in there. Quarter was at the top, as the other sheet. So I'm not going to go back to it right now, but I had quarter in there. Just trust me. Go back and watch the recording. Do you need net for client and vStore? That's a good question. You need .NET 4.0? I don't know the answer to that, Bob. I have to look it up. Don't know. Yeah, so Power Pivot is an add-in. There's Power Pivot 2012. So you just do a search out there. And let me bring our browser here. You should all be using Bing. Power Pivot 2012. Download. There it is. First one. Download. And there it is. All right. Oh, do you want the reporting link? Sure. I closed my slideshow by accident. Let me get that again. It is right here. I'll put that in the chat room for you, so you guys can just copy and paste it right out of the chat room if you like. There it is. And last slide of the day before we wrap up. My information there. So my name is Mike Davis. There's my blog, MikeDavisSQL.com. I also have a mirror of that on BIDN.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at MikeDavisSQL if you would like to tweet. And if you have any questions, you can email me at MikeDavis@Pragmatic Works, or you can hit me up on my blog. If you have questions, BIDN is a great place for forum questions. We have a ton of forums out there. So go out there and check it out and see what's available. And hit me up if you have any questions. So with that, I will pass it back over to Melissa. I know there's a few other questions coming in. I'm sorry, guys. We're running out of time. I have to cut it short because I have another meeting right after this I have to go jump on. So, but I'm going to pass it back over to Melissa. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Thank you, Mike. Just as a reminder to everyone, our sessions are recorded. If you go to pragmaticworks.com, go to our Learning Center, and you'll find the past webinars, and you can actually locate all the previously recorded sessions in that section. And again, Mike, thanks for your time, and we hope to see you back soon. And everyone, enjoy the rest of the week. Thanks for joining us.